For those who don't know me, my name is Paula Rodriguez. I am an employer coach with the Employer Inclusion Accelerator program with Goodwill Industries of Alberta. Our mission is to promote disability inclusion, education, and awareness among employers, fostering a more inclusive and accessible workplace for people with disabilities. Today, we will discuss the challenges immigrants with disabilities face in Canada, focusing on systemic barriers, workplace inclusion, and strategies for support. Today, our guest speaker is Andres Galindo. He is a risk management and continuous improvement professional at Parkland Corporation and the owner of Straight Options Real Estate. With nearly a decade of experience, he provides strategic guidance to businesses and individuals. Beyond his professional roles, Andres is deeply committed to community leadership. He mentors career seekers through CCIS and serves as a strategy chair of the board at the Willow Ridge Community Association. He holds an MBA from Ivy Business School and is a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. So without further ado, let's welcome Andres Galindo. Andres Galindo, the virtual floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I would love to see more faces, to be honest, on the Zoom. I only see names, but that's okay if you feel comfortable being off camera. So today is I'm going to share an important topic. Normally, I share a lot about breaking the barrier of the Canadian experience point. And in this case with Goodwill, I talked to Paula, well, it was last year, I think, or early this year. And we were just chatting about some of these other barriers that immigrants face. And the reality is that there is a very important segment within the immigrant population, which is those immigrants that have some form of disabilities. And I think it's important to recognize that that's something that can be an opportunity as well for employers. And I think that we should definitely explore, a bit of that topic and understand if there are any possibilities to include them, if there's, value to incorporating more of these folks who have disabilities, then we should study it and see ways to actually implement it in the workforce. So today I have some of this information for you, and let's go to the next page here. This is a bit about me, and yes, Paola shared already. So, but the point I want to drive here is a bit different, right? So for me, as you can see, over the years, I've been able to gather experience, I've been able to gather some designations, and also with time, I was able to gather enough experiences and expertise in order to help my community, all right? So one of the things that I'm noticing over, well, the last 5 years that I've been coaching or mentoring newcomers is that there's a lot of people that actually, oh, you don't see my screen? Wait, 1 second. Oh, interesting. Okay. Let me know if that's better. Good. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, like many people that I talk to in these events and mentorship circles, there are a lot of immigrants with decades of experience. Sometimes they come in as almost seniors and they have a wealth of experience, yet when they come, they're faced with many obstacles. And the thing is that while for me, like I've been here in Canada for almost 24 years. So as an immigrant, a young immigrant, I grew up here and was able to gather all of this, expertise locally. I had 2 years at PwC in Venezuela, and all of that experience helped me, just to come here and continue my career. But the point is that there are many, many others with even more experience and many more, skills that are coming fresh to Canada and having difficulties entering the workforce to provide value for employers. So that's something to consider, right? That's something interesting that I note. So let's see if I go. So the question to you guys, and I understand that most of you, or if not all of you, are on the employer side. The question is, are you looking for value? Are you looking for talent, loyalty, or return on investment? Or are you just looking for experience or Canadian experience? What is it that you guys are looking for? All right. So I want to share some statistics with you, which is 28.9% of Canada's labor force were immigrants in 2023, which is a significant number. And this is followed by Canadian-born workers and also temporary workers that are non-resident. 8% of the unemployment rate of immigrants in 2003. So 8% was the unemployment rate for immigrants in 2003, 2023 versus 4% for Canadian-born workers. All right, so double. 6.7% is the unemployment rate of persons with disabilities in 2023 versus 4.6% for workers without disabilities. And 47.1% is the employment rate for persons with disabilities aged 15 or over in 2023 versus 66.9% for those without. Now, why is this, right? And in my line of work, which is continuous improvement, a lot of times we approach work by studying if there are pros, cons, right? And trying to see if there's enough value that exceeds the cost or exceeds, what is maybe perceived as the not so good, elements of this idea. And we try to apply an independent mindset and understanding if maybe it is worthwhile to pursue, for example, the Canadian experience, which many immigrants face, this barrier. If it's worth it, we should apply it, right? But if it's not, and there's no concrete base or a concrete business case around it, then maybe we should not apply it, right? Same for disabilities. If there's a true or valuable business case to be explored with people of, who bring value, but may have a disability, and if that exceeds the cost or if that exceeds, any other notions that are against it, then of course we should pursue more employment of people with disabilities than not, right? So we're trying to study this, and in this, we're trying to ask a lot of whys, right? So why is this happening? Why the statistics? And sorry, 1 second, please. Yeah, so one of the things that we see is that mismatch of skills and opportunities exist, and I can be very upfront about it. I've seen it at Parkland Corporation. I've seen it in so many other places where I've been able to help as a consultant. And there's also the Canadian experience bias, right? So what is it that is restricting newcomers from providing value and their experience to employers here in Canada? The fact that they don't have experience here working in a company, is that it, or is there something else that we should explore? Then the stigma around disabilities, there's a lot of notions, there's a lot of bias around, oh, maybe it's expensive, maybe, like, I don't know if it's worthwhile, maybe it's very delicate to hire, people with disabilities. And so definitely a lot of other things like credential recognition issues, language barriers, all of these are things out in the air that are affecting the community, right, in some way or another. And then there's also the lack of value awareness, right? Because for one, employees who have disabilities may not be super confident in expressing what they can do, right? And then on the other side of the employers, they may think that we need to give these folks maybe lighter tasks or something easier, just to make sure that they are able to function. And we want to be careful, right? So again, without knowledge, a lot of these things become more perceptions, right? And is it based on facts? Maybe, maybe not. And that's what we aim to explore. So as part of my process to guide you in these minutes that we have, is to understand what is the Canadian experience. Now, I want to ask the group here in the chat, and I don't know if you're able to unmute, but I want to know if you guys have heard of this concept, the Canadian experience concept. Is it possible to hear from a couple of people? Maybe Mark Cheney. I don't know if you can mute or unmute yourselves. Okay.
Hey, Andres, I apologize. I just finished my lunch and came back downstairs and heard my name. So what's your question?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, all good, all good, all good. Welcome. So, no, the question is this on the screen. So, what's the Canadian experience? Have you heard about it as an employer? Like, have you come across this term?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it's a bias. So to be clear, I am born in Canada, and I'm actually mostly helping newcomers find employment in Canada. And you do hear this Canadian experience question a lot. And to be brief, I do think it's very much a bias. There are some qualities of Canadian work that may be different from someone's upbringing or from their original country. But in my opinion, it's mostly unjustified. I think that a lot of work experiences are very, very similar. And even if they're not, it's something that's very easy to adapt to. So I think it's a bias, but I'm not an employer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And anybody else in the room that maybe is an employer? I know Kamish, sorry, that's Goodwill. Illyrian Zaimi, are you able to come on screen? Or let's see, Bea Petrini. Anybody else? Okay, all good. So what is the Canadian experience? So definitely some people have heard about it, hopefully everybody in the room. And this is the context, right, that we need to understand, right? We're in Canada, and we need to understand that Canada participated in the war, as we hopefully know or are aware. And out of that, right, when the Allies won, a lot of hype around Canada started, all right? And we're talking here like in the 50s, right? 1950s, 60s even. And a lot of immigration started to be incoming into Canada, right? A lot of people heard about it and they wanted to explore, they wanted to just start somewhere new, somewhere different than Europe, right? Who was experiencing a lot of, repair and, the repercussions of the wars. So they came, but then the idea started that maybe as Canadians, and this is again back in the 50s, 60s, if a lot of people are coming into our country, we should establish some form of parameters or a way, of doing things. And we'll call it a recruitment or a standard, right? That we need to create so that whoever comes into our country learns our ways of doing things, right? And of course, this may have arisen from a nationalistic kind of idea, maybe trying to portray Canada as this new place where we need to build and keep quality, higher and all that. But this became the standard, right, for recruiting people back then. And what we have to realize is that back then, the Canada of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s is a Canada, or was a Canada, that had a young level of competition and globalization compared to today. Okay. Today, more than ever, our economies are integrated. Now we can see disputes around it with tariffs and all this stuff that is challenging the fabric of this globalization that has been building up over the years. But in today's world, or in today's Canada, we have so many challenges, that are facing our economy and facing our communities, where we should be updating our recruitment ways. All right. We have so many people, right, that can provide a lot of value, yet we are applying a recruitment standard that is not up to date. Okay, that is from the 60s, 70s. Okay, so if anything, there's something to be said about what we're doing in terms of recruiting talent. And I think there's always an important opportunity for improvement in this respect. Okay. Now, what is the Canadian experience argument? So again, if there is value to it, then let's explore it and let's see if it actually is something that we should pursue. So reduce integration risk is one of the pillars. Basically, what it says is, if you have Canadian experience, then you're easily or more adaptable to the workforce here in Canada. You know the way of communicating, you know the way of, you know, maybe bringing up ideas, and you know your way around people here in Canada, right? So it's easier for the person to integrate here than somebody who does not have the Canadian experience. Okay. Now, again, I don't have any statistics to prove that to you, but this is one of the pillars. The next one is maintain standards. This one is a little more concrete, and it's very visible in some industries more than others. For example, medicine, engineering, and even law. Okay. Now, yes, there is a level of perception that, you know, even I would agree that is necessary to have some more structure around the people that are trying to enter these professions in order to maintain a higher quality. Okay. Or if not higher quality, maybe preserve the quality, right, of what we have. So that's it. But for other, you know, jobs that are needed in the current economy, there isn't a concrete, you know, statistic or a concrete, you know, study that I could share with you around how the Canadian experience would help somebody maintain the standard, for example, in customer service, right? There's nothing concrete that I could find that would support me in telling you that it helps in maintaining, you know, a higher quality in customer, you know, what do you call it, customer acceptance, you know, or keeping clients and all that happy, like that. There's nothing to suggest that somebody without Canadian experience cannot accomplish that, okay, for employers. And then the other one is a skilled integration. And skilled integration, basically this point is that we cannot have everybody who's coming into Canada join the workforce at once, right? At their correct level at once. So this is more of a gradual integration over time. There's one thought around this, which is that when immigrants come into the country and they're not finding a place, you know, for example, an engineer or a senior engineer is not finding a senior engineer role in Canada when they come in that time, which may be 1 year, 2 years, and who knows, even 5 years, in that time, because these people are presumably smart, intelligent, they are innovative, right? That they will create value through entrepreneurship, that they will create new work, they will create businesses and so on that will help the economy. So it is a way of, again, delaying, you know, integration, but with the idea that more value can be generated from these immigrants who will find other ways of, you know, fulfilling their, you know, their personal objectives, or even personal career objectives as well. So that's something to consider with the Canadian experience argument. Now, what are some inefficiencies? And this is what I like to discuss, because in my case, I'm always interested in continuous improvement about inefficiencies, right? So when we talk about this, I want to share with you some statistics. When it comes to immigrants, 92% of applicants to the express entry system in 2022 had post-secondary education or higher, but employers still cited Canadian experience as a way to guarantee consistency in work quality, communication styles, and regulatory compliance. And that was a study done by RBC. Next is 47% of university-educated immigrants aged 25 to 64 work in jobs that require only a high school diploma or less. Okay, think about that. We have a lot of talent being placed or matched with jobs that require little skills, right? Or little education compared to what they have. Employment rate. So the unemployment rate for recent immigrants, those who arrived, exactly, that was the 9.1 that we talked about. And then the IRCC revealed that about 38% of immigrants felt their skills and qualifications were not adequately utilized in their current jobs. All right. And then last one, 63% of employers admitted here in Canada that they prioritize hiring candidates with Canadian work experience over those without it, regardless of the foreign candidates' qualifications. And of course, when we talk about the economy side of it, there is a statistic that I found that says that underutilizing immigrant skills leads to an estimated loss of about 50 billion annually to Canadian GDP, which is about 2.3% of it. So then we can talk also about tax and how that is affected by providing less wages to skilled workers in non-skilled jobs or jobs that require less skills than what they have. And there's also that social assistance element, which suffers because of this, because the less taxes you collect, the less money there's available for social services. All right. So it's all integrated. And when we talk about the society, right, we have to understand that, and while we don't see it, there is some brain drain happening in Canada. What is brain drain? Just a simple idea that Canadians with aspirations come into the country. They want to, start a new life, earn more than they did back home. And what happens is that they come, they see all these obstacles to their integration, and some of them will have little resistance, and they say, you know what, it's not for me, I'll leave. So within a matter of 1 year, Canada might have lost somebody with unique talents just because of this context that they are experiencing, this environment of barriers that they're encountering. All right. Now, global talent and competition is something very important to Canada, especially nowadays that we're talking about potential, trade wars and all that. How can Canada survive without the necessary talent, right? We need more people in this country that can bring new ideas, new ways of doing things, improved ways of doing things. And we can only do that if we attract them and we also lower barriers to entry. Okay. Now, in this sense, we need to, as employers, be very mindful of this, of our practices, and try to help in this situation. Because if we help decrease, then we can allow more people to come in with more passion and then fulfill their objectives. All right. And also help the employers in their strategic objectives. And now, why this? Why this? Think about it. When immigrants come in, and I've seen them in my mentorship, some people come in with a lot of energy, okay? But the more and more pressure there is, financially, and this notion that they cannot get a job and maybe they need to start from scratch, from, as an entry-level employee and build themselves up again in Canada. All this creates a mental pressure. And sometimes people that I've mentored have already, experienced some depression or some other form of mental, challenges that unfortunately could become more severe, right? And studies do show that there is a potential for that. But listen, while there is a chance for us to help, I think, and also study, if this makes sense for us as employers, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really bring out the best of new immigrants that are coming in, and also make sure that we align our business needs with the skills that new immigrants are bringing, That way we can have a win-win situation. Okay. Now, in summary about this Canadian experience is that it seems that it is more of a perception, okay, that has been building up along the years. A bias because we have seen it that people believe in it, but yet there's no true facts that support it. Okay, so this is a notion that exists out there in real life here in Canada, and it's definitely hindering the abilities of employers to capture the right talent. Now, unfounded because, again, there are no facts that I can show you, or there's no facts, even studies that would support in this very multicultural Canadian context that we live in, that would suggest that the Canadian experience is the standard, all right, or should be the standard. So let that sink in. Now, I want to do a little exercise with you. And for this one, I would really appreciate if you come on camera, or at least your voice is heard. And I want to ask what you guys see in this picture. Anybody?
A beautiful flower.
Flower.
A beautiful flower, okay. I actually see an animal, a big animal. Do you guys see it?
Where?
It's a huge animal. Or do I need glasses? Am I wrong?
Dolphin?
What do you guys see?
Is there a dolphin?
Okay, anybody else? Somebody said dolphin, okay. Anybody else?
Oh, I only see the flower.
Flower,
Yes.
okay. Okay, anybody else? Awola, Illyrian, Bea? No? Okay. So
I also only see.
it is
Sorry, I also only see a flower.
it
Yeah.
is a dolphin. It is a dolphin.
A
Mark,
dolphin?
can you tell us where you see the dolphin?
I mean, it's clearly like a flower, but within the flower, if you look at the way the petal's
yeah.
shaped, there's a dolphin there, kind of up the upper side of it.
Right here.
Yeah,
Right
I
here.
see
Oh,
it.
I see it. I see it.
Uh-huh. There you go. So what is the point of this exercise? Is that we need to start looking at things a little differently, right? Because within what we see, there's another reality. And that's something that we can definitely, start looking at with patience and with care and a lot of this good intentions that we have as employers. So let's continue. So let's add to the challenges that we just described, okay, and what we've been studying in the last few minutes, and let's add the disability factor to it, okay? So these are some misconceptions that I've been finding around disabilities, okay? So higher costs for accommodation, okay? The idea is that, well, if I aim to include more staff that have some form of disabilities, I will have to invest in new technologies and maybe new structures and just, again, a lot of other things to make it easy for these staff to function around the office or function around the workplace. So is that true? Actually, what is the truth is that there's a lot of grants available to employers to actually minimize any financial impact. All right, the Canadian government has provided this, and there's also studies that suggest that 56% of employers spent nothing on accommodations. Actually, only 39% incurred a one-time cost, averaging around $500, and only 4% faced annual expenses for accommodations. So, in other words, it seems that this is not such a big investment as it sounds, okay? That's one thing. There's another element, which I think is very prevalent, if not maybe the most, the strongest perhaps among the three, which is lower productivity. And the idea here is, of course, with people and disabilities, maybe, they're not able to provide a lot of value because of their condition. And there's so many other thoughts, surrounding this. But is that the truth? So KPMG last year, they did a study and they found that 60% of Canadians with disabilities felt underemployed, meaning that they did not feel they were being utilized completely, right, for their skills. And then there was also a study by the UBC, University of British Columbia, and revealed that employees with disabilities performed as well or better than average on productivity metrics and had a 93% retention rate. Okay. So when you look at the studies, you realize that these notions that people with disabilities bring less value or maybe, cannot do as much is actually not true. Okay. Next is increased liability and risks. This one is actually quite easy to debunk because it's not that people with disabilities are at risk. It's more around their need for access around the facilities. In fact, studies suggest that people with disabilities are more in compliance with safety measures. Okay, so let that sink in a little bit. And let's continue. What is the inefficiency then if we're not entertaining this idea of hiring or even taking a look at the candidate pool of immigrants with disabilities? Well, utilization, we already talked about it through that KPMG study. And then, listen, there is a lot of talent and a lot of people with relevant skills that can make it more efficient, processes more efficient, and even better, only because of their own situation and the fact that they needed to, adapt and find ways to function better themselves as human beings, that their thought process or their structure, the way they have come to learn how to function in society, has helped them also in applying the same ideas to the workforce, right, to their work, and finding ways to adapt, making it better, and so on. Retention as well. If you compare, there is a metric here that I want to share with you, and it says, right, that people with disabilities have less turnover than without. And that percentage is 18% for people without disabilities, okay? And compare that to the metric that I gave you just prior of about 7%, okay? So people without disabilities tend to just move around faster. They tend to, be there in the company for maybe a year, they leave and whatever, they try to monkey branch into another opportunity that pays more. And so they have more ease of movement. But something suggests that people with disabilities are more loyal to the company that gave them the opportunity. And that way, we see that retention rate be a lot more higher, right? Now, innovation, that's something that we should quickly talk about. And there's a study by Accenture, right, which is a renowned consulting firm. And the fact is that companies that employ people with disabilities see up to 30% higher innovation levels and 28% higher revenue than those that don't. Now, this is the point. People with disabilities bring unique problem-solving skills, adaptability, and creativity, which are traits essential for innovation. Businesses that exclude them operate inefficiently by missing out on diverse perspectives that drive faster, smarter decision-making and improved processes. That was, again, by Accenture. So, in this time, right, we have explored two barriers that impact immigrants and the subset of that population, which is immigrants with disabilities. Now, what is it that we can do as employers, right, to help break the barrier? I propose three broad ideas, okay, that are very practical. First is identify the true needs of a business, all right? You have short-term, long-term goals, you have HR requirements, with respect to maybe quality, certifications, and all this stuff. And at the base, you want to hire top talent, right? To match the business needs. But to do so, you should prioritize skill-based hiring, not location-based, skills-based. All right. Realize that many of the challenges that companies face in Canada are actually from people that have Canadian experience, right? So the notion that somebody without Canadian experience will bring maybe higher risk to the enterprise is, again, unfounded and should be challenged, right? So my encouragement is to prioritize skills-based hiring. Maybe make sure that the certifications have an equivalent here in Canada at least, and then assess the actual hard skills, the technical skills, the soft skills that people can offer. And then match skills correctly. As we saw, there's a lot of inefficiency in the matching process. And I think that something that would help a lot would be to make sure that whoever is applying and you guys see as a successful candidate, it's actually matched with a job that is actually challenging for them, not easier, because the risk there is a lack of motivation over time. When you give somebody with a lot of experience, a lot of drive, something too simple or too junior, there is less motivation, right? They might do the good job, but over time, they might not be sticking around, all right? So if you want long-term employees, give them a good challenge that they can grow in, all right? Next is to really understand this situation, with disabilities included, is that you have to identify your business needs, as we say, and also conduct a skills-based hiring analysis, all right? Again, look at the background of the employees, not just the fact that they just arrived in Canada, okay? For example, in the oil field, I had one person that I mentored very quick, and he was from, he was from India, but he had, I think, 20 years of experience in Kuwait in oil and gas, and he was an engineer. And he was facing issues, in terms of, he was already a 60-year-old, industry veteran. And you're coming from a place where oil and gas, practices are, very high. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, all these, regions with a lot of this, requirement for high education and all this, very important experience that is required in those countries. And they come here to Calgary and suddenly they're being told that whatever they did doesn't really count. Like, we just want to make sure that you have keen experience first. So then again, focus on the skills, not necessarily where they just or did they just arrive, right? That they deserve a little more, room to communicate what they can bring, right? That opportunity is what I'm talking about. And then the important one is number 3, assess the cost benefit scenarios. And I will talk about this in the light of the disabilities. Why? Because not every disability is limiting, okay? There are people with maybe HD&D or PTSD or something that is still somehow manageable, okay? Maybe there's just a wheelchair component to it, and that's still okay. Are they able to operate at a, intellectually at a high level? Like, the fact that they're in a wheelchair doesn't necessarily, correlate with less intelligence, right? So that's something to consider. In the benefit, there's a lot of it that's not being talked about, that is not being studied, right? And there's also a study to support that, and that's more in the psychology of things, that suggests that people tend to just follow the status quo or go the easy way if given a choice, right? So it is challenging sometimes to break the tendency that the trends do something a bit different in the hiring process. But again, it takes a bit of effort, and I think there's a lot of benefit that should be really discovered. And in light of all this, I think that given the conversation we just had about the cost and the benefits, that there's a lot of more benefit that outweighs the costs, or even integrating somebody with a disability and so on. But I realized something, that this is not a science, an exact science. So what I propose later on in this process is to, of course, pilot, measure, understand how this system is working for you, and that way you can make better decisions for yourselves. But if you're not doing the studies, right, it's very hard to, support the idea that it's just not for you or not for your business. All right. Now, number 4, I will mention that leverage up-to-date hiring policies and procedures. And why do I say this? It's because, again, a lot of what we do today tends to be what has been done for the last 10 years, with little adjustments sometimes. And is that the reality? Should we update it? Should we update these practices? I think that based on the context of Canada today, with more competition and more, of this need for talent and value in the workforce, I think that it's worth to take a look at, the way you're doing things today. So one thing is hiring people and having people who understand the value of immigration and the value of people with disabilities. And the other one is having policies that support this change, okay, which is important. As a pronouncement from senior management, you want to establish a tone that is basically saying that we are willing, right, to give an opportunity and listen out to more of the people from this community, right, that deserve maybe, again, more space to share their experiences, and that way, we can have a better assessment of their skills and how they can contribute to our strategic goals. Okay, and then of course 5, I already mentioned, pilot and measure performance, right? There's no way around it. You want to make sure that this is something that is working for you, and if it's not, it's not that you just quit. It's about continuous improvement. It's, well, are we actually asking the right questions? Are we, what are we doing, basically? What are we doing that is maybe in need of change so that we gather better candidates from this pool? Because again, if studies suggest that there is value to be extracted, then we need to figure out a way of actually doing it the correct way so we get the benefit. Okay, so the call to action really is for employer training and awareness, right? You have a lot of courses around diversity and inclusion, I'm sure, like I've seen in many companies, PwC, and clients that I've had and all that, which is great. But that is a check mark for compliance purposes. But what I want to challenge is the actual training and awareness of the people who make decisions around the way hiring is done. Okay. One thing is, again, having a course, an online course for everybody in the company to do. One thing, the other thing is to actually put that into practice. Okay. Next is shift to skills-based hiring, which is, again, the idea that we need to look at the skills of the people that are applying to our jobs and putting in a very critical eye in the skill sets that they are saying that they're bringing, challenge them, assess them, interview them, right, for that, without necessarily looking into how many years they've been in this country, okay? And then next is the culture change. Listen, like I've been doing these sessions for CCAS and other institutions here in the city, usually for employees or those who are seeking to get a job. This is a great opportunity with Goodwill because as employers, you have the opportunity to be part of the change and actually contribute to breaking this barrier down a little bit, okay? And I realize it's not something that will change from one day to the next. It's not going to change with my conversation today. We need a lot more people opening their eyes and being willing to contribute to this initiative, right? So for cultures to change, we need to start talking about it, okay? Bringing more awareness, again, more knowledge, more understanding on what this topic actually means, the benefits to the employers, the benefits to the employees, and how society in general can improve through change, okay? So I would like to thank you for attending this meeting, and apologies again as well for all the technical difficulties we experienced in the first 10 minutes. I hope that it has been of benefit to you. I am open to questions, or I'm also, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I could, share that with you through Paola. And anyways, I'm really keen to getting in touch with you and hearing more from you. So thank you. Thank you, Paola and the Goodwill team, for the time and the opportunity to share on this topic.
Thank you, Andres. Thank you for this valuable information that you shared with us today. If anyone has a question, you can throw it in the chat. Or otherwise, we will let you go. It's already 12, but if you have any questions, let us know.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Andres. And thank you, Paola.
You're
Awesome.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for assisting today, and we will see you in the next Lunch and Learn.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.